All right, folks, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. We're going to have a case study here on a copy of Giant Size X-Men #1, which I'm sure needs no introduction to most of you since it is an epic multi-first appearance from what has been termed the new X-Men at the end of the 70s, featuring Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, second full appearance of Wolverine, you know, lots of key characters. This one does not look like it was ever worked on. So if we look particularly in the area over here by Wolverine and that glare, we can see that there's a lot of wrinkling. There's a lot of light finger bending and dents. There is a pretty noticeable tear right here, so we're gonna have to be careful not to mess with that. There are several defects that will break colors, so that spot right there. And unfortunately, sometimes CGC calls that a finger bend. So that's probably somebody grabbing it and shaking it in the wind and having a fingernail put that dot in there. So even though, you know, it clearly breaks color, some of CGC's bends are color breaking finger bends, which is a little annoying. You know, there's a bunch of defects up here, some light creasing, but all in all, I think this book is gonna look a lot nicer when we're done with it. It does have a little bit of a yellow overtone. Obviously, there is an immense amount of dirt to clean off of here. You can see that all the way down on the bottom. So we're going to need to do a thorough dry cleaning of the front and the back on this one. We are then going to need to do some blue LED overlay. Now this book has, you know, kind of a yellowed, creamish, maybe true off-white interior. I'd probably call it a true off-white interior. And, you know, but the inside splash pages look okay. And so to help try to keep that native feel to it, what I'm going to do is probably only do 2 blue light overlays on the front cover and the back cover, and I'll probably do that with our 3% hydrogen peroxide. And the reason for that is I don't really see a reason to treat the interiors. I don't see any foxing or anything like that, and we're going to want to try to keep those inside covers just a little bit darker than the X side, because that's the side that's been going against these kind of old pages for quite some time. So you know, that's going to be the game plan here. Then this thing's going to get probably 2 square bound presses. You can see it's got quite a curl to it there, and there's a pretty big ridge right here as I slide there. Now the square bounds, I always get people asking me why their square bound isn't flat, and you can see right here that staple bulge. You can see the staple bulge right here, and if you flip it on over, you can see where that staple is on the back. And if you're pressing that, there's no way to flatten out that area right around that staple to be perfectly flat. If you open it on up very carefully, you can even see the staples on the inside there. They're quite large, and they're going to protrude into that cover. And so these square bound books have a fundamentally different construction than the later prestige copies from the 80s that are fully glued. So these were glued, then stapled, and then had the cover glued on them. And wherever those staples are, you're always going to have a distortion on the cover because you can't fix it and you can't move it. Thankfully, this one looks like the bundles here, if you look at the spine, were actually pretty well assembled. Some of these are quite crooked, and if you hold it on its side and you see crookedness along that spine, then there's really going to be nothing you're going to be able to do to flatten it out or square it out, because the bundles were glued crooked and then stapled crooked, and then they're going to be stuck being crooked. So anyway, this is going to be a mid-grade copy. Hopefully we'll be able to get it up to that 6.0 range. Overall, I think it looks really nice. I will point out that this little bit of ink up here, we're not going to be able to do anything with. So that's going to go across yellow and black, and so we're just going to have to leave that. Looks like somebody marked it somehow for some reason, but that one's just going to be there to stay. So I'm going to go get some pictures of this so that we have some nice before and afters to compare and contrast to, and then I'll pop on back and we can start doing some dry cleaning. All right, howdy folks, let's get going here. So we've got my microfiber cloth to scoop up all the eraser bits. We got my eraser click pen, micro eraser, and hopefully this will be most of the tools of the trade we need here. The white areas, of course, you want to be careful not to go too much into the color, but as I've shown you before, a little bit of incidental color touching can be fine. Now this one has a little bit of overhang where that front cover is hanging off the edge, and you can see that on a bend ridge there. And so what I'm going to do is take my backer board and give me some support underneath that so that I'm not creasing the cover, and so that I can clean it all the way to the edge. So we're just going to use that as the support and go very diligently down. Now this one's probably going to be a long, slow dry cleaning video. And so if you get bored, feel free to skip to the end. Lots of goo in here. Some of these light fingerprints may or may not come off. And And again, my target for most dry cleaning stuff is to go, 90, 95%. That last little bit, you're just at too high of a risk for some serious damage typically. Now around this tear, we're gonna have to go real slow. So I'm gonna put my finger over the tear so that I don't hit it. I wanna kind of go down the spine. Now I'm gonna look right at that tear so my eraser doesn't quite get close to it. Skip the tear. There's a little bit of a crease right below it. I'm gonna go above the tear, carefully avoiding it. Now I'm going to go with the tear, very slowly, very lightly, and just try to peel off as much dirt as I can from the tear. But I'm going parallel to it so that I try not to make it worse. I'm going towards the open edge. There we go. Plenty to clean up here. Now this corner has a bunch of creasing and you can tell it was folded or dog-eared a couple of times. And so I'm going to put my finger over that. You definitely do not want to be rubbing with force across the creasing. So we're just going to kind of leave that corner as is. It doesn't look too bad. Try to go between Wolverine's claws here. And again, we're not looking for every molecule of dirt to come off of here. We're looking for most of it so that it doesn't look discolored and gross. But there's really no point or benefit in pushing it really, really far. I think when you're starting out, that balance of being a little too aggressive with knowing what to let go or just leave there is probably the best. Now this little bit of a folder or a corner fold right there, I can unfold with the eraser. Just hold that down. I'll have to pay attention to that when we press it to try to make sure that we press it flat instead of folded. Nightcrawler's feet. A little bit of a baby spine split starting there. I think the top had a baby spine split too. A little bit of a micro tear across the top. I was trying to keep my eyes a little bit ahead of the eraser. On rarest occasion, I hit something I don't see, and you can end up making a tear a little bit worse or dislodge a piece that was barely hanging on, and of course that's catastrophic. So call those critical fails. Very gently across the blue comics here. A little bit more dirt in the group than I'd like. See if we can pick that up. Got all this white space between the characters, all the white space between the X-Men, where he did Rogue a little bit. Sorry, Storm. Rogue isn't even out as a character yet. Talk about a goof. Yikes. micro eraser, remember, leaves a little bit of residue. So every time I hit that micro eraser, I go over it very gently with the larger eraser just to buff that micro eraser crud off of it. All right. I think that's it for the front. My phone's been blowing up for the last minute or so here, so I'm going to answer that and be right back to dry clean the back. All right, let's flip this on over and start dry cleaning the back here. Plenty to dry clean. I'm just going to start in the middle. I mean, especially over here, like, holy cow. We'll have to pay attention that there's a tear over here too, but I mean, that area just looks disgusting. All right, I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to start by cleaning off my eraser off camera. Again, I'm just using electrical tape, and I'm just rubbing the eraser on it to generate a small pile of bits so that I clear off most of the crud. And I'm going to extend this out, and we're just going to do a lot of broad sweeps here right through the color. And again, we're getting crud, but you know, it's not like there's a lot of bright red or anything in there. And I'm just going to slowly rotate the eraser, and again, I'm not using any downward force. I'm using just broad sweeping motions to try to clean up as much as I can from the broader area. And do the same thing down here. We'll go back over this here in a minute, a little bit more focused. All right, so plenty there. Just gonna clean that all off. And then we can kind of go in the tighter areas. And hopefully that broad sweep, you know, just got some of the surface debris off. Especially when you see this much dirt on the back there. You can also use the dry eraser sheet and do the Ouija board trick. So that would also be acceptable. A lot in here. Now down in these text boxes, I try to go with the text, because if you accidentally go a little too deep, it turns out the printing density was not always perfect on these anyway, and it like kind of can disguise a little bit of an ink rub. Obviously if it's bad, that's not going to help you, but on the slightest overdue, you can get a little bit of forgiveness that way. Obviously, that's the worst case scenario, so we don't want to do that to begin with, but can help. It's more of an issue on Silver Age books, though. Sometimes the gloss on those is pretty deteriorated. Usually on giant sizes like this, it's fine. All right. So lots of crud in here. Now the blue LED overlay, I'm hoping will just make some of that yellow dinge just a little bit brighter. You know, this book definitely has just a bit of a dingy look. You know, it's from 1975, so we'll give it a break for being almost 50 years old. It's at 48 years old. Like, I mean, come on. We'll go with it. It's beautiful shape for something that's that old. Let's go down the spine. Now with the staples on these, you want to be careful not to rub through the staples. You can actually tear the cover on the staple. And occasionally I get one where the staple has rubbed through. So you never directly want to go over the staple with any amount of force. Occasionally you can rub just the edges very gently like that, but no force. Definitely no force on the staples. Gosh, Giant Size X-Men. What a great book. I still hold one of the best comic book scenes of all time in the movies is Nightcrawler and the second X-Men bamfing around the White House. That was so great. All the Secret Service agents were like losing their mind, like, what is this thing and where is it coming from, where is it going? And Nightcrawler's just like bamfing around. Poof, poof. That was awesome. What a way to kick off a movie, for sure. Now, CGC does have my Hugh Jackman book. Advertised a Hugh Jackman signing in November. I think my book was checked in early November. Yeah, it's May. It's still scheduled for grading, and I confirmed on the phone last week he has not signed any of them. He's scheduled for sometime in the near future is what I was told. Just kind of a bummer. For the amount of money they charge for that, you think that they could get somebody there in like under 6 months. It's been a full 6 months. Sent that book before I even started the YouTube channel. It's crazy. There's that tear coming on up. This is the gross spot. So now we have a conundrum of a gross spot we really want to rub with a tear. Yeah. See how gross that is right there. Like, this is the spot I was working on, and you can just see how nasty the surrounding areas are. So need one heck of a dry clean in that area. All right, so I'm gonna have to go very, very slowly here where that tear is. Good news is the crud is coming out, and I'm not totally convinced that it's yeah, I don't think it's a full tear. I think it's just a crease. Doesn't look like it goes through the paper. That's lucky. That'll make this easier. Little creases like that you can rub across. Oh yeah. Look at that. I was all worried about nothing. So I better be cautious and conservative than having whoopsies. Nobody wants to whoopsies on a giant size X-Men 1. That would be sad face. Fine line of crud right down the side here, so I'm going right down the edge. And again, I'm using that board underneath to support it so that I don't crease the edge or... If you want another look, you can see right in here. Just see right that line. Cleaned, not cleaned. Cleaned, not cleaned. Plenty of work to do. Snag there, that was unfortunate. Luckily no damage. Just trying to mob very gently across that yellow. Yellow is both really easy to pull up, but also looks a lot better if you remove a little bit of black from it. Go. Lots of crud from there. Alright, that area looks totally... You can still see the little bit of a crease right there, but man, that area looks totally different. Lucked out on the one little micro snag too. Always makes your heart stutter. I will say, even after all the books I've dry cleaned, this is still the part where I think you get the most risk and the most damage. It's just something about applying force and friction and rubbing to really old paper with unknown fragility, unknown brittleness. So, and it's real easy to goof up. Just takes one little slip, one little sneeze. So definitely it's not something to do lightly. There you go. A little tear right there. Be careful about that. Nice big dark spot. Do like the big open swath of white here, so that'll make it a little bit easier on us. Tear down here. These are evenly spaced on the bottom. I bet you they're gripper tears. So it's manufacturing. It's very common on this issue. It's also super common on Amazing Spider-Man 361, First Carnage. Very common to have those gripper tears. Generally it's manufacturing and is allowed at a 9.8. In this case, this book won't make a 9.8 for plenty of other reasons. But I'll still do the best we can with it. Be very focused when doing this. I'm not doing it on camera. I typically throw a podcast or an audiobook or some music on in the background and try to zone out into the work. Alright, that's all she wrote for this one, I think. I'll give that another wipe off there. Looks a lot better. Just so much crud removed, particularly on that back. I mean, yikes. So we're going to go put this in the blue light box. Give it probably 2 exterior treatments in both exterior surface. Come on back. All right, folks, it's time for a pre-press look here at this copy of Giant Size X-Men #1. This one had a good amount of wrinkling to begin with, which was part of the reason I was excited to give it the old Top Comics treatment. But you can see it looks a little bit worse now in terms of the wrinkle if you look at just kind of that the reflection and the glare. So that's pretty standard after our blue light LED treatment, so nothing to be too worried about there. That area over here looks a lot better. The area I'm really proud of is, if you remember how disgusting that edge over here looked, that you know, I highlighted a couple of times, that looks like amazing now. And so that's a really good before and after area, I would say, to highlight, you know, why you want to clean and press a comic book. It was really dingy, really dirty, and now it looks fantastic, and it's all going to smooth out and it'll look brand new after the press. So we are ready to give this one now our good old loving squeeze. So this one is a square bound, as I've said a couple of times here, so it has that nice ridge and the goofy staple. And so I have a whole special video on how I press these, so check it out. It is a Silver Surfer #3, first appearance of Mephisto. That one got a really nice bump ski from CGC after the press, and I took a video of how I stack the layers and do the whole thing on that one. So feel free to check that one out. In the meantime, we're going to cook this one at 140 degrees for a full full 30 minutes with our special stacking layer that again is highlighted in that other video. So if I remember, I'll put a description or a link to that video in the description down below. So stay tuned. All right, folks, she's ready for a trip to Florida. So this book now is quite nice and flattened out. As always, there's distortion around the staples because these square bounds just suck to flatten. Like, you know, that's just how they were made. So that's kind of what you have to deal with. But this thing looks a lot whiter and brighter. You know, it has all kinds of dinge removed. All those light wrinkles are gone. You know, the area over Colossus before this just looked like an ocean seascape with all the waves, and now it is nice and smooth. So I've got pictures of all that. Once this thing comes back from CGC, I will work those up into some nice side-by-sides, and I'll post them on Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to go cross-reference those on my other social media. So hopefully you enjoyed this while this thing is headed back for its nice round trip to Florida and then eventually to its owner. And it'll be weeks here, but hopefully it'll just feel like a few seconds for you. So stay tuned until I get to unbox it. And as always with these, you know, really high-end keys here, I'm just going to slide this one on into a Golden Age bag and board set. And so this thing now is going to be nice and protected, you know, with that nice border of extra back. And these are both full back boards, and so this thing should be able to take a reasonable impact on the corners or on the surface without damaging the comic in between. And it's nice and sturdy. So that's how we're going to ship it on out. Fingers crossed, CGC will be kind. All right, folks, CGC is back with a verdict on this raw copy of the Giant Size X-Men #1. This one did require a lot of TLC, but I am very happy to report that I think it exceeded our expectations, coming in at a 7.5 copy universal CGC grade, blue label, and it has the white pages. So I really love that about this one. All in all, a really great result for the owner of this book, and I couldn't be happier. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the process here, so please go ahead and leave a thumbs up for the video, subscribe to the channel, and look for the before and after pictures of this one close up on Instagram and Facebook. So stay tuned and enjoy the day.